Okay. What's up, party people? This is Max&Max, where we've got all the facts. Well, mostly. I'm your host, Max.
I'm also Max.
We have limited education and limited expertise. However, we are your exclusive experts in just one thing.
Reading you stuff off the internet.
Welcome back, everyone. Today's topics are dinosaurs, evolutionary biology, and the future of mankind. Max, take it away.
So, as Max just stated, I will be presenting you with some dinosaur facts. The largest dinosaur that we know of is Gigantosaurus, which was taller than the T-Rex.
You know what? I said Gigantosaurus when I was a kid. Was I wrong?
I did as well. It is spelled Giganto. So I believe it would be pronounced Giganto.
You're probably right.
Yes. Because Giganto would be G-I-G.
I'm just fucking with you, dude.
Anyways, but it was taller than the T-Rex and longer. However, it was slimmer. They lived, obviously, millions of years ago. If you didn't know when dinosaurs lived, you could read a history fucking book or like any science book whatsoever.
Yeah, it was a little while ago.
Yeah, just a few years ago.
Right. And dinosaurs, when they roamed the Earth, they roamed at a time of like the supercontinent, right?
Yep, Pangea. Yes. Actually, the Gigantosaurus, or Gigantosaurus, as many people call it, was only a few million years ago. And it actually came about when the supercontinent was breaking apart.
Interesting.
In only South America it's found, not in North America. The only things that we have found of it are 3 fingers, and that's all we know of it, is that it somewhat exists. We know that it had 3 fingers on its hand, and we have very limited bones to prove anything besides that.
So, what? They just have its hand?
I believe so, yes.
Well, then how do they know it was bigger than a T-Rex?
Because of guessing the size of the hand would be my assumption.
How do they even know it's a hand?
That's a good question. I could not answer it because, paleontologists will just throw a name on just about anything they can find sometimes.
You're deferring to the paleontologist experts?
I will take their word that they might know about dinosaurs more than I.
Maybe.
Just maybe. But they believe it hunted Argentinosaurus, which was the largest land animal ever found. So the largest carnivore obviously ate the largest herbivore.
That tracks.
Yes, just slightly. This was during the Cretaceous period, so I guess somewhat supercontinent, but starting to fracture, I guess. It belongs to a family that originated in the southern continents of Gondwana, an ancient supercontinent. So you have Pangea and Gondwana.
Is Gondwana like the like a in between phase of the supercontinent?
It must have been. I never knew this, and I know quite a bit about dinosaurs. I'm going to have to look this up more.
Yeah, we're not talking about plate tectonics today. We're just going over some dinosaur facts.
Yep.
To satiate the people, because God knows I loved dinosaurs when I was a kid. And
I absolutely loved them. I used to make little dinosaur sounds even. I was...
Used to. You do it every day at work. I hear some shrieking in the distance, and I'm like that's gotta be Max.
It's just some days are rough. Some days are rough. So the tiniest dinosaur that we have ever found was the size of a bee hummingbird. dinosaurs. These are very small dinosaurs. And it wasn't anything like the hummingbird. It actually had teeth. And it hunted insects. This was known as the... I'm going to butcher this because these are dinosaur fucking names. What are you expecting out of me? Oculodentavis. I think I actually did pretty well with that.
That's probably right.
Yeah. Which literally translates into eye-tooth bird. Yeah. There was pictures on the site that I'll obviously have linked in the description of this bird, and it was fossilized in amber. So it must have gotten stuck in some sap or died in the sap, and then turns into amber, and they have a whole little head of it. Whole head.
Yeah, like Jurassic Park, the mosquito and the amber.
Yeah.
Because, like, a lot of people might not understand. Back in... Because this was the Cretaceous period,
yes.
Right? Which is the final period.
I'm not sure when this one was around, but we can assume. We'll assume that it's in the Cretaceous.
The Cretaceous period is the final period that dinosaurs were roaming the Earth.
Yes.
And that...
Or Jurassic was.
Oh, I'm backwards?
So it's Mesozoic, Cretaceous, then Jurassic.
What about Triassic?
Fuck! What about Triassic?
Oh my god, you didn't do any prep work!
I forgot about the times! The times escaped me, man. Right.
Okay, we'll double check that. We'll pull that up. Call us Joe Rogan, pulling up the facts mid-show. Dinosaurs, periods. But, like, let's be real, though. Back in the day, the period doesn't necessarily matter.
Yeah.
Oxygen levels on the Earth were insanely high. The Earth was going through a huge developmental period, and that's why one of the reasons, the O2 levels was one of the reasons why we had, you've probably seen in the history books, big insects, big dragonflies, big reptiles such as dinosaurs.
Yes.
Big sea creatures.
Yep.
Because, like, the megalodon isn't just a myth, people. It was around. And the oxygen levels in the ocean and in the atmosphere were prime breeding ground for massive super creatures.
Yes. Very... there was... The insects' time was prior to any of the dinosaurs' times, and they used to have literal spiders that were the size of house cats.
Wow.
And then centipedes that were up to 3 meters long.
Amazing.
Massive animals.
Yeah, the Mesozoic period, or Mesozoic era, is the era defined by dinosaurs.
Okay.
And it is split into 3 periods, names that we were familiar with. Triassic, the first, Jurassic, the second, and Cretaceous, the third. The Triassic period was about 250 to 200 million years ago. The Jurassic period, 200 million to 149 million years ago. And the Cretaceous period, 145 to 65 million years ago.
So this dinosaur came in at the Cretaceous, so you were correct in saying that it was towards the end, as it is 99 million years old. The amber that was trapped in is.
Amazing.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, the ability of fossils to be maintained, I mean, is just so fascinating. Like millions of years.
Yes.
And they, these dates, obviously, there were no people at the time.
No.
So there was nobody recording this on their cell phone. But they estimate these dates and ranges based on carbon dating, among other...
Geoformations is another thing which leads to the creation of so-called epochs that we have. But yes, I mean, as something that was in the news a while ago, a few years ago, I should state, the baby mammoth that was completely mummified. And then I was also talking to my friend. She had found an article recently that they found a mummified dinosaur.
Whoa.
Recently.
What?
Yes.
No way.
Yes. I don't have the link to this. However, I'm more than willing to believe her. However, was the news source entirely truthful? I'm not sure.
Oh no, yeah, that's right here. We'll link this source too. Sorry, we're going off track, people. I know you wanted dinosaur facts, but now we're going into mummy dinosaurs. It's too good to skip.
This is very interesting.
2019, a mummified dinosaur, almost perfectly preserved. Wow, it's a beautiful image. You guys should definitely click on this link. Discovery.com. Pretty reputable source.
Oh, is that an Ankylosaurus?
Yes, it is.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen.
That is...
The discovery of the dino mummy was in 2011, but this article was published in 2019. It took him 7,000 man-hours to extract this. Nodosaur. The Nodosaur, which is a close relative of the Ankylosaurus, that lived 110 million years ago.
Wow.
They carved through a 15,000-pound rock to remove the dinosaur's body from snout to hips.
Snout to hips. That is huge.
That is amazing, and I don't know. We don't have the time to go into that, but yes, there was giant dinosaurs and there was tiny dinosaurs.
Yes.
So get you back on track there.
So then there might be some dinosaurs that people think of very commonly as dinosaurs, but weren't actually dinosaurs.
Oh.
You know about the Dimetrodon?
I'll be honest, I don't. The guy with the fin, right?
Yes, a very large sail, not like the Spinosaurus, but close enough. Well, the Spinosaurus, I think they disproved that it had. Either way, the Dimetrodon was not a dinosaur, per se. It was a mammalian reptile. The Dimetrodon lived in the Permian era, which was 309 to 23 million years ago. It had a sail like the Spinosaurus.
Wait, 309 to 23?
Yes.
It rained on this earth for 280 million years? Is that right? Did you read that right?
No. 309 to 233 million years.
Oh, I misheard you.
Which is still
70 million years.
Extremely long time for a dinosaur to flourish for that long. So it went extinct 40 million years before the first dinosaur even started to walk. To walk. This was a four-legged animal like it's often portrayed as. However, it is not a dinosaur, in case you did not know. There is also another dinosaur, the Prinosuchus. Is a genus of extremely large temnospondyl amphibians.
Oh, temnospondyle.
Thank you.
Cut out your part.
From the middle Permian, which is 270 million years ago.
Yeah, Permian's before Mesozoic.
Yes.
Based on my chart. I didn't actually know that. I'm reading a chart.
It was found in Brazil with an estimated length of 30 feet.
Oh my God.
This is a giant amphibian, just a massive frog that used to roam the world. It doesn't look like a frog, but it's just a giant amphibian. It had a tapered snout, numerous sharp teeth, and a long body, short legs, and a tail adapted for swimming. And then you have the Parasaurs, are a distant relative or a distant ancestor of turtles. These were like these massive four-legged walking, not dinosaurs obviously because these aren't dinosaurs, but it was very similar to
a reptile.
Yes, a reptile.
Yes, people, turtles are reptiles.
Turtles are indeed reptiles, but don't put tortoises in water. You're killing them, please.
Yes, turtles are not tortoises, people.
No.
Tortoises are land creatures.
If you see a turtle on the side of the road and you don't know if it's a tortoise or not, set it, just put it on the side of the road and leave it. Don't try to throw it in the water.
Yeah, guys, do your research before you come to Max&Max.
Yes.
Call us at 911. No, but yeah, tortoises. There are land tortoises that look like, they have a shell. They're not turtles. They do not belong in the water.
Yes.
Just put it, if you really want to help and you're not sure, you don't want to Google it, just put it next to the water.
I have seen too many videos of people throwing tortoises in the water, and it's very sad. Anyways, so this Parasaurs lived in Russia, and they were 2.5 to 3 meters long, so approximately about, was that like
7 to 11 feet.
Yeah, 7 to 11 feet. So they were large, turtle-like animals.
So they have like a shell and like.
I don't believe so. They were just very armored. They didn't have like a full-on shell. They just had very armored back. They're in before, or it's a BBC documentary of like prior dinosaurs before they were dinosaurs. None of them are dinosaurs until the end. But
we'll plug the documentary.
Yes. So these specifically developed legs underneath their body, not on the sides of them to hold their weight.
Look at that.
Whereas you see like most dinosaurs with like their shoulders, you can visibly see their shoulders. These animals would have their legs completely underneath them.
Interesting.
Yes, yes.
Okay. I love dinosaurs. It was my first love as a child. Believe it or not, Max and I are both nerds, and I have always been a little science nerd. When I was a little boy, we had this rock outside of my house. Long story. Me and my brother thought it was like a fossilized rock because
Okay.
I don't know. This is going to be niche, but remember when you were in grade school and they had that image in the history book of the Archaeopteryx?
Yes.
And for people at home, the Archaeopteryx is one of the first birds. It is the link between, it is a visual link between reptiles, ancient reptiles, super reptiles like dinosaurs, and modern day birds.
Yes.
And it's this very reptilian bird, and it's this pressing of the bones of the fossil of this Archaeopteryx on a stone of sorts. And it's brown and
I think it was the first fully like built dinosaur that we had found.
yes, it's a very famous photo, and it's a very famous link. Yeah, you just said it. I don't need to repeat it. But the coloration, that brownish rust color, was on this stone that my brother, like this big rock that my mom had in her garden.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
And so my brother and I one day, I was like 6 and he's like 8, and we're like, dude, that looks like an Archaeopteryx hand. And I was like, he said that, my brother, maybe
Yeah.
said that, and I was like, yeah, it does. So we grabbed some other rocks from the garden,
Okay.
and we just started whacking this big stone to try to like rip the Archaeopteryx out. Because we're like, we're coming to save you, buddy. So we're just banging on this rock, and my mom came out and was like, what the hell are you doing to the gosh darn rock in the gosh darn garden? We're like, Mom, it's a fossilized rock. And of course, it was not.
No, no.
But yeah, my dinosaurs were my first love, and,
Yes.
and then in middle school I got into biology, and I was skeptical because in a lot of Christian families they teach you that that evolution is like the enemy of like God. And stuff.
Yes.
We're not going to talk about that in this podcast right now. We might talk about it later,
Eventually.
but it does not. Darwin, Charles Darwin, the father of natural selection and modern evolutionary theory, was not an atheist, and he was not trying to disprove God. He was merely observing scientific phenomena, which
Yes.
we now know today as evolution.
Yes.
And evolution is the basis for all modern science. When you hear the word genetics, what do you think of? You think of breast cancer, the BRCA1 gene, right?
Yes.
BRCA1 gene, maybe people don't know. Unfortunately, some people might know more than others due to experience with breast cancer. But it's this gene identified by researchers. Usually these researchers are American, but some of them are from China and Japan, all over the world. And they identified a breast cancer linked gene. And this BRCA gene, if you can remove it or suppress its effects on your body, you can prevent breast cancer in people. It's amazing.
Wow.
It's an amazing accomplishment. I'll plug some of the research. But I'm merely putting these out as examples, because there's also genes that in more modern research are linked to preventing HIV. There's modern genetics that are linked to sickle cell anemia. It's this, the blood cell. It's this little circular
Yes,
cell
yes.
that we have in our bodies. Sickle cell anemia is this condition where the cells look like crescent moons
Yes.
in your blood, but it gave us rise and us, I mean, me, a doctor, no, but it gave the scientific community insight into how to treat malaria, a very deadly disease.
Yes, I remember this.
In tropical locations in sub-Saharan Africa, in Southeastern Asia. It is a horrible disease carried mostly by viral vectors like mosquitoes. And all those things are genetics, right? Genetics. And people in their mind, I don't think, have a very negative view of genetics. It's
No.
very helpful.
Yes.
Well, genetics, the only reason we know about genetics is because of evolution and natural selection and the work of Charles Darwin and Gregor Mendel and among other many brilliant scientists,
Yes.
obviously.
Yes. The whole team that found
Yes.
who mapped the human genome and other genome teams.
Yes, it was a collective effort. Rosalind Franklin
Yes.
and Watson and Crick. Watson and Crick, is that right? Ooh, why am I spacing on their names? The scientists who discovered DNA.
Yes.
All modern science is amazing and beautiful and helps people live longer, healthier lives. And all of it started from, natural selection. And some people snooze off during science class, but I'm trying to get you hyped, people. We're going to get hyped about evolution today. Because natural selection, as Charles Darwin first observed it, he was on the Galapagos Islands. Very tropical. He was hanging out. His dad was a pretty rich guy, and he thought that Darwin, should get out there and do something with his life.
Yeah, yep.
But Darwin was a big book nerd, but his dad said, if you're going to do book nerd shit, get on this boat and go to the Galapagos Islands and make something of yourself. And he was like, fine, Dad.
As one does in that time period.
It was like 22, something like
Yeah,
that.
you just get thrown on a boat and you're like, all right,
Yep.
I'm going to the Galapagos.
Yeah, and they trekked all the way to the Galapagos Islands, where Darwin observed, as any good scientist does, with some drawings in his notebook, his handy-dandy notebook, and said, some of these birds are really similar. I'm sure all of us have seen this. You see two animals, you think they're similar, maybe you turn away. Darwin did not. He noticed that some of the birds, finches, common birds, they're
Yes.
small, usually in the United States, brown beaks, black coloring. They flit about and they eat seeds. In the Galapagos, they have a very rich, biodiverse community there. Biodiversity meaning variety of life. So like a lot of different plants, like big plants, small plants, green plants, flowering plants, and then a lot of birds, a lot of reptiles, a lot of insects, a lot of arachnids. Very, very biodiverse, rich epicenter of life in the Galapagos.
Absolutely, yeah.
Very convenient for Darwin, actually. And he saw many finches, some with bigger wings so that they could fly longer. He took note of this in his many weeks observing the Galapagos. Some birds with bigger beaks so that they could break bigger seeds. Some
I
birds
wouldn't
with
even
smaller
say
beaks.
just, very specified beaks to fit certain niches,
Right.
which he quickly began to notice too. Or shouldn't say quickly, but he began to notice these niches being filled by certain beaks,
Yes.
specifically the beaks.
Yes. The beak thing is important because obviously people, we have sharp teeth, we have flat teeth, and this is observable across mammals. And birds have a shorter generation time. They reproduce quicker. So it's easier to see how these things can change over time in children, in offspring of birds. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I'm a little excited. But back to basics. He was observing differences in beaks and in what they were eating. And as any good, sensible person knows, an animal has to eat. You got to eat to live. You got to drink water. You got to have somewhere to live, and then to reproduce and to continue your species, you gotta be healthy and you gotta maintain that structure.
Yes.
And he was observing this over weeks and months in the Galapagos, and he came up with an idea. Now, the common ideas at the time were debated, but one of the most common ones, which today we think is silly, was that usage begot change. So a giraffe has a long neck, right, to reach the top of trees.
Yes.
There was a theory, this wasn't like concrete fact, but it was thought about in scientific circles, that giraffes used to look more like horses. They used to have small necks. But over generations, they would stretch their necks to reach higher. And they would have a baby, and that baby would have a little bit of a longer neck. And on it would go for many generations, and so finally giraffes had really long necks. You laugh.
I do.
But this was a real scientific person.
And then, no, it's a completely, if you have to look at it from the perspective of people during that time. They didn't know. They couldn't have known. They were, by all means, asking the right questions, and there was nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. They were truly trying to understand, how things got to where they were. And that's important.
And this goes hand in hand with farming, too. Agriculture was becoming more streamlined across the world. Obviously, in the 1800s, there was still a lot of cash crops and, hard labor, slave labor going on everywhere. And they were trying to maximize ways of harvesting crops and developing crops. But crops and planting, that was almost extremely separate science than animal life, than mammalia, than birds, than
reptiles,
flora and fauna, as it's called, plants and animals.
yes,
And they were seen as very separate, which is why Darwin, I don't think, used plants in a lot of his research. He was doing a lot of animal-based research.
yeah, not as I know.
But he observed these different beaks, and he came up with the idea that it was kind of random. He came up with the idea of like mutations. Mutation is his idea. The idea of like, hey, maybe these birds all started from one common ancestor. There was one finch, and these finches, because of storm or because of they were looking for food, right? What is an animal going to do? Look for food. They looked for food in all sorts of places, and the animal, the finch from that original finch, was able to succeed and reproduce. That was what success was defined as, reproduction. Was able to reproduce better than his or hers, whatever, competitors
Yes,
in their environment, only if they had an advantage. And that advantage would be bigger wings, bigger body, stronger legs, stronger beak, harder beak, sharper beak, more narrow beak to fit inside flowers, a harder beak to crack seeds. And he came up with this idea through observing the vast number of the ability of birds to travel really helped him. He was like, well, birds can fly, so of course they'd go over there and look for something that was more suitable for them.
yeah, absolutely.
And it struck this whole deep 40-year journey until he eventually published his theory of evolution 40 years later after decades of research. And he called it natural selection. The idea that Mother Nature herself and the availability of food resources and the random mutation of a species over time and reproduction leads to speciation, is what he called it.
Yeah,
The idea
the
that-
difference of how they look or how they act. Yeah, definitely.
That those finches, those original brown finches, turned into brown finches with small beaks, into brown finches with small beaks, and brown finches with large beaks. Or now white finches, because there was a lot of white stones on an island, and they were able to blend in and not get captured by predators. Or black finches, because they were able to hunt at night. All of these changes in finches were brought on by fortunate mutation and ability to reproduce based on that expressive trait.
Yes. I think that's a thing to really talk about is the fact that these reproductions were because of their ability to survive so well.
Yep.
As very individualized or specialized animals. Whereas you could if you were to introduce maybe certain other animals into the area, they would not do as well because they aren't specialized in the same way those finches were. Luckily, the Galapagos has become a national park, I believe, for one of the countries, and they're very well protected there. So
it's a beautifully diverse and rich place, the Galapagos, and I can't stress enough how none of that has any religious connotation.
No, not at all.
It is a mere observation of a scientist, and it was refuted and fought, and it's been resisted for decades. Well, it was resisted for decades.
Yes.
But once it was observed again and again and again and proved and upheld again and again and again, it's just led to an overwhelming burden of proof and data.
Yes.
Another more modern example, I know talking about stuffy old guys on an island that you've never been to is not super compelling. And I don't really want to be compelling. I'm not trying to persuade you. I'm just trying to show you the process so that maybe you yourself can try to observe this phenomenon around you. Just look at a squirrel, why is it shaped the way it's shaped, or a bird or a rabbit. But I'll give you a more simple visual explanation, because obviously I'm not giving a PowerPoint presentation. I don't have visual aid. But I can give you something that I know will stick in your brain, because it's always stuck in my brain for years. It took me till college to learn this. Surprise, I went to college. And there's this fish called the stickleback fish, the three-spined stickleback fish. It's this puny little fish. It looks like a sardine. It's this little gray fish. You can fit it in the palm of your hand. It's ugly. It's gross. It looks exactly like you picture a fish. It looks like big bug eye. And it's ugly little fish. But it's a vertebrate. Vertebrate being a fish with, an animal with a bone in it. Three-spined stickleback fish. And they can be found in Alaska, right?
Okay.
And Alaska, beautiful, the last frontier, amazing state. Shout out Alaska. The stickleback fish is like a salmon. Some people might know about salmon, some people might not. Salmon live in the ocean, but they swim upriver. It's very famous and amazing and beautiful. Bears sit on top of the river to catch the fish.
If you watch a National Geographic show or Discovery Channel, you've probably seen it.
Yes.
Or Animal Planet, too.
Yes.
Shout out to those for being amazing
Yes.
services.
Oh, very good stuff.
Yes.
And what's the difference, everybody, people in the back, between an ocean and a river? What's the difference? 3, 2, 1. Basic one, salinity. Salinity is percent salt.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
If you drink salt water, some of us have, I don't know why I did, I definitely did. You do not get satisfied from that.
No, not in the slightest.
It's gross.
Especially when you're swimming in the ocean and just gulping that stuff down.
It's terrible. And that's a very basic way of explaining why there's saltwater fish and there's freshwater fish.
Mm-hmm.
There's more complicated chemistry and acidity and all that sort of thing, and their ability for their gills to work. But basically, there's some fish that work in freshwater and some fish that work in saltwater. However, salmon seem to violate this. They lay their eggs in freshwater, but they live in saltwater, and they're very fascinating. But they're very big, and they're kind of fast, and they're such an essential part of the ecosystem that it's hard, and they take a long time. They take a year or so to reproduce, and their generation sizes aren't that big. They're kind of hard to study.
Yes.
The stickleback fish does kind of the same thing. Traditionally, they lived in saltwater, in the ocean, and then they moved into freshwater to lay their eggs. But they're very small. They're kind of lame fish. And sometimes they would get separated. This is called, I'm pretty sure it's called sympatric speciation. Forgive me, my professors would kill me if I made that mistake. But it's the idea that you get separated from your clan.
Okay,
People.
yeah.
Well,
Yep.
they're not people, they're fish. But you get separated from your other fish. You don't have anybody to hook up with. You got no way of reproducing your line as a fish. You get stuck in a river when you want to go back to the ocean, but now you can't get back because you're looking for a place to lay your eggs. Now you're stuck. However, they have that mutability. They have that ability to be in freshwater and saltwater already because they're like salmon.
I believe there's a certain process, I can't remember the name of it, that allows them to go from saltwater to freshwater. I can't remember it.
Yes.
I know that bull sharks can do it as well.
Yes, there is a small collection of fish that
Yes.
have this ability. It is rare. And this rare ability made them a prime suspect to study natural selection in short term. 30-year study from 1990 to around 2020 had Alaskan researchers observing these 3-spined stickleback fish. They were separated from their fellow fish in the ocean. And over this 30-year time, them just hanging out in the fresh water, they were able to isolate a gene using DNA research to find the one that was producing phenotypically being observable, this observable trait that was making them able to breathe salt water. And over the 30 years of them living exclusively in the river, the ones that reproduced better and lived better were the ones that were more inclined to living in that fresh water. Over those 30 years, they were no longer able to live in salt water. They were only able to live in fresh water.
Wow. Interesting.
Only 30 years.
And they performed better as a species in the freshwater as well?
Yes, they were completely, they were thriving.
That's crazy.
This thing that they had just been doing for their lifetime as a species, this separation and this 30-year time led to an observable change in their ability to function in the freshwater.
That is crazy. They're a saltwater species. You'd think they'd thrive the most in saltwater, but
yeah, they did.
With that isolation, it's very interesting that they would come out and thrive better in freshwater.
This was research done by, I'm citing Robert Sanders from Berkeley. They were up there in Alaska. I'll plug the research in the description. This is not my research. But it's really fascinating to see. I think, I'm a big Bill Nye fan. I think seeing science or hearing about it in a very practical way and in a very reasonable amount of time can make a person, not submit, but like you just feel it as fact. And that's the whole point of what I'm trying to say.
Realize the realism of it.
Yeah,
the reality.
It's not a political thing. Evolution and natural selection. I'm not trying to convince you that you have to believe in something. I'm just trying to show you what scientists, what hardworking men and women have seen, have written about, and have produced. And I think the stickleback fish is a modern example of that.
Yes. Yeah. Very interesting. So, Max, what do you see our future as human beings becoming? What do you see in our future for...
Max talking about humanity. Just to let the people know, we just had a long conversation about evolution for about 15 minutes. To get us to this point, but we want to share these thoughts with all y'all. I just mentioned this. Elon Musk, he's kind of a controversial guy, he's like a plutocrat. You know what a plutocrat is?
Yes.
Yeah, the whole idea, he's just exorbitantly wealthy and no one should have that much money. I kind of agree with that. But it's not like he stole it. But some people could argue that he did.
It all depends. Either way.
But yeah, he's a really wealthy guy, obviously, and it's because he's come up with some pretty good ideas.
Yes.
And namely, SpaceX and his whole space exploration thing has been pretty successful. It's gotten a lot of rockets off the ground. I have this really big interest in terraforming.
Me too. Yes.
Terraforming, terra is a Latin word for Earth. Terraforming, it's making other planets into Earth. And he kind of wants to colonize Mars. He wants to get people up to Mars, and he wants to make it suitable so that we can have a colony up there, and that we could have a second planet, so to speak.
Yep.
And we could warm up the planet,
add oxygen.
And an ozone layer.
Create better soil.
Because the soil is shit.
Yep.
It's negative 60 on Mars. Some people think, it's red, so it's hot. No, it's cold as fuck on Mars.
Yes.
It's cold as fuck. It's 2 moons?
Yes.
2 moons. It's cold as fuck. It's a little smaller than Earth.
Yep.
There is water underneath the sand.
Yes. Inside the caves, they believe.
Yes.
Yep. That's where they believe the first colonies would go, too.
Yes. We could get in the caves, we could get some soil. And then there's this thing called cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria is this very basic life form on Earth that uses sunlight as its food. It's a photosynthesizer, like plants.
Yep.
But it uses sunlight to create plants. Humans, for example, breathe O2, oxygen, and we produce CO2, carbon dioxide. So when you're breathing on somebody, you're not breathing out air. You're breathing out CO2, you're breathing out carbon.
Yeah.
And plants are symbiotes with us in that way. They drink our CO2. They consume that as well as the sunlight and water to produce oxygen. And that's how, the planet kind of works. The animals eat the stuff the plants pump out, and the plants eat the stuff that people pump out. It's beautiful. And cyanobacteria eats the sun, doesn't need water, but it does some advanced chemical process. Doesn't produce O2 as much as a regular plant would, but it produces O3. And O3 is ozone. And ozone is what's a big part of our atmosphere. It keeps us safe from the sun. Because the sun is a fucking mega laser, dude. In the biggest definition. The sun is a fucking laser. If we didn't have an atmosphere, we would die in 30 seconds.
Yep.
Not even 30 seconds. This planet would literally explode in a fireball if we didn't have the atmosphere.
It would be horrific. To say the least.
Yeah.
Especially since there's so much oxygen and on Earth, it would just, the
planet would just explode
in flames.
And so, I think, you get an ozone layer on Mars, and obviously there's the whole greenhouse gas effect. That's a long story. But if you had an ozone layer, the planet would start warming up a little bit.
Yes.
Because, you wrap yourself in a blanket, you get warm. You get this gaseous blanket around Mars. It'd be kept there by gravity for the people at home. Gravity keeps the the ozone kind of around the planet, warms up a little bit, gets to negative 40, negative 20. Yeah. Now we're in the territory that Antarctica is. It's people already live there. Mm-hmm. They sure as fuck do. And then we get, we start doing our shit that we do here with our natural gas and stuff. Obviously, it'd be hard to ship that way over to fucking Mars, but you start shipping gas over there. You get people over there. You get little cities. You get some electricity, and you can have fucking people over there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then this is a little off topic, but that leads to human evolution.
Yes.
I think
No, absolutely does.
that's what we kind of want to talk about.
Yeah.
I think people are going to fucking change. And people are going to fucking start looking different. It's going to be weird.
You know, I think it's believed that when humans end up, like, the first real Martians are going to be quite a bit lengthier than your average human is, a lot taller. I think they believe that they will max out at a height of 8 to 9 feet.
Interesting.
Yes.
Because of the whole gravity difference?
Because, yes, we have lower gravity, so the bones will kind of stretch out more, and they will be a taller hominid.
Fascinating.
Yes. I thought that was a very interesting thing, that these humans would be, on average, a lot taller than normal people. This is not portrayed in most movies or TV shows, sadly. I think it would be a very interesting topic to have in these movies and TV shows, but sadly they have not brought it in yet.
Well, that's where you're wrong. Have you done your research on the Martian Manhunter from DC Comics? If you're a reputable scientific source.
I forget. We will also turn green and shapeshift.
That is correct! He's a man of culture! Well, the green Martians are actually similar to humans in a lot of ways. But the white Martians are much taller, longer, rather grotesque looking.
I remember those.
Yes, and they are a minority on Mars. Miss Martian, a member of the Young Justice. She is a white Martian. She pretends, using her shapeshifting powers, to be a green Martian to be more accepted in her culture, but she is a white Martian.
Interesting.
That is the only known lengthiness that I can think of from Mars. But yeah, that's a good point.
Yes.
Gravity, people might not know. I don't know. I just like explaining things. That's the whole point of the show.
Yep.
And you probably already know this, but fucking, when you're in space, bro, ain't no gravity. You're just fucking, milling around. I mean, there is gravity, obviously. Gravity's always affecting you, but you're not on Earth, so you don't have Big Mama Earth grabbing your ass and pulling you to the dirt. When you're in space, you kind of get loose. Your spine separates. When everybody comes back from space, Mark Kelly, for example, the astronaut, he was like a couple inches taller. He has a twin brother that they literally used
to study
their differences. It was amazing. Very convenient. And he had a twin brother, and they were like, oh, fuck, dude, like, your vitals are different just from being in that International Space Station for as long as he was.
His telomeres were also longer, so he had an extended lifespan compared to that of his brother. As long as he obviously did not die of other causes, but of old age, he was going to die later than his brother, almost for certain.
Telomeres are the end of chromosomes, and chromosomes are inside all of our cells, and they hold our DNA, and they're essential for us to continue to look and feel the way that we do.
Yes.
The reason that people get wrinklier and weaker when they get old is because our telomeres shrink on our. I mean, there's a lot more than that, but the telomeres shrink on the end of your chromosomes. Like your number of replications decreases.
Yep.
You have a finite number of beats in your heart. You have a finite number of replications in your cells.
Yes.
It's just the way it goes.
And apparently, if you go to space, you will possibly live longer.
Okay, so we got Martians. We're already developing this shit.
Yeah.
We got Martians, first of all. Fuck, that's crazy. They lived on Mars. They're probably all going to get paler. I mean, there ain't no fucking sun over there, right?
Depends on which side. I believe it's tidal locked, so it doesn't actually...
It doesn't tilt like... It doesn't spin like
I don't believe it spins.
Oh, yeah, because we got hit by a big fucking asteroid way back in the day, like a billion years ago, and that's why we spin.
And the core is also spinning, which helps us spin, I believe. Or maybe the core still.
Earth got hit so hard that we're still fucking spinning.
We got fucking rocked.
Because some people don't know this. The dark side of the moon is a real thing.
Yes.
The moon, people, does not spin.
No, it does
not. The
not.
moon spins around us, but it's always facing us with the same face. Fascinating. It's awesome.
Yeah. However, this is not something I've thought of until recently. Depending on how humans want to terraform Mars, we could increase the mass of Mars to get the relative G-force to the exact same as Earth.
I suppose that makes sense. If we made it fucking heavier with tons of fucking rocks and shit.
Yeah, rocks or heavier metals even.
Well, I mean, that's all predicated on the idea that we get shit over there effectively.
Yes.
Which is what Elon himself is not directly overseeing it. So what SpaceX wants to do, they want to get people over there and they want to start seeing if it's feasible. Because if you can get people there, like that's a third, half the battle.
Yeah.
Once there's people over there, people are pretty amazing, pretty industrious. We're gonna figure that shit out.
And if you know that you are very unlikely to return because it is, a rocket ship to Mars, and maybe it'll be years before you're able to get back, you're gonna fucking bust your ass to get shit done. You're going to, you're gonna do what humans do. Try and survive.
Yeah. And so we got Martians. We got... They're probably not going to get pastier. Probably just going to be the same skin tone that they were.
They could end up...
Because they're going to be on the warm... They're going to be on the sunny side of Mars, obviously.
Yeah. This could be more of a, obviously, genetic modification, but depending on their height, they could need a second heart.
Interesting.
Because of... Or at least something similar to it. Simply because we can barely function at even 6 to 7 feet tall. So if these humans were 8 to 9 feet tall, they would have extremely short lifespans if they did not have another heart pumping their blood consistently.
Right, so we got 2 hearts. We got 9 feet. We got skinny, long ass fingers. We got
Slender Man, basically.
We got hanging out. Fucking Doctor Who Slender Man looking ass. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, I saw this one of those cautionary tale YouTube videos. I'm sorry, I don't know the creator, but it was what humans will look like if we keep doing the same stupid ass shit. And it was this woman. She was her eyes were bloodshot, and her back was hunched, and her fingers were curled and gnarled. She was only around her 30s. Because she spent all of her time on the computer and at a desk, and over generations. Even though we just talked about how certain actions don't necessarily change your genetics.
Yeah.
But people that survived, in the future could be inherently more hunched. So maybe we could go back to being hunched and look disgusting because we spent a lot of time on the computer anyway.
True.
It was just a cautionary tale about human, not laziness, but human satisfaction with our very, very sedentary lifestyles.
Yeah.
In the West, I should say.
Yes.
People in countries all over the world other than the United States and England.
The majority of countries do not have the same lifestyle as Americans and most of the West,
Yeah.
to say the least. What else could we develop?
Well, I mean, obviously there's all that stuff about gene editing and CRISPR-Cas9 and,
Yeah.
inserting shit. The whole designer baby shit, which I'm against. Making super babies, making babies perfect height and perfect weight and for sports. It's
such a ridiculously subjective.
Yeah, and what's perfect? Fuck you.
Yeah.
Eugenics is fucking stupid.
Agreed.
Leads to weird supremacy bullshit, which is dumb.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm super against the whole designer baby thing.
For sure. Yeah, no, I'm
But the
only reason I think one should genetically engineer someone is if it is to improve their health. So if it was the AIDS gene, I don't think that would be entirely bad for people to end up having, so long as it doesn't affect other genes later on in life that could result in cancers and stuff.
Explain that more.
Yes. Essentially, so long as a gene doesn't cause more harm than it can do good to be added to a human, I think that could be good for humanity as a whole. And I don't think it should be reserved for one group of people, obviously. It should be a worldwide attempt to destroy these extremely harmful diseases. Maybe even a better immune system for humans, so that way we'd be better at fighting cancer. It'd be more effective at fighting cancer. I think that would be amazing for humanity as a leap forward in not essentially genetic evolution, but in a way it would be evolution in genetics. I don't think we're going to see an ungenetically modified evolution in mankind within our lifetime, though.
Right, forced mutations that lead to advancements in our species, length of life and abilities.
Yep.
But I meant to bounce off what he was saying about the AIDS gene, that he was talking to me about it, and we were talking about it. Some people, and by some people I mean most people, are definitely not aware. CRISPR-Cas9 is this pretty advanced technology that could, in fact, I mean, we could do 17 episodes about it.
Yes.
But it could, in fact, lead to the ability to enter somebody's DNA in their cells at a massive level, massive scale, and to completely change who you are and what your gene code says. And human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, causes AIDS, autoimmune deficiency syndrome.
Yep.
Autoimmune deficiency syndrome, if you get as much as a cold, it's a high chance that you could die and not recover because your immune system is so weakened by the HIV virus.
Yes.
That you pass away at a very young age.
And I think it would be very important for us to eliminate said disease. I think it would be great.
And I agree with that. And the way that they have identified, it's in the early stages of research, but HIV, the immunodeficiency virus, attaches to immune cells and other cells in the body to propagate itself, as viruses do, to disable the body, obviously, to disable the immune system and slowly destroy you from within. But how does it do this? It doesn't just roam in, it doesn't just stroll in like a person walking into a store. It's a virus, it's a organism of sorts. It has to attach to your cells to harm you, and it attaches at a specific location in your cells, a specific location on your, like, in your gene structure.
Yep.
And if they can identify the protein structure that HIV attaches to, and then they can identify from that protein structure what gene in the human body creates it, they could delete that gene from every person, and then you wouldn't have the protein that HIV connects to.
Yes.
And so then HIV could literally enter a human body, one of the most deadly diseases ever, and
die,
pass away.
Yeah.
Because it has nothing to grab onto. Like, you can be the world's strongest man, but if you got no handholds, you're just going to fall right off the side of the mountain.
Yep. And we've already found people who have a genetic disposition to essentially, not catch HIV.
Fascinating.
And if it can be harnessed for good, I think more the merrier. Start whipping it up. Get it out there for people. But obviously, there needs to be quite a bit of research done into this. Not something that humans can do very quickly, as it is so many different humans who obviously have very different genetic makeups. But I guess we will see what comes of it in the future, and hopefully we can see some good.
Right.
Yeah.
We got 9-foot guys immune to AIDS on Mars.
With two hearts. Super pale.
That's not too bad.
No, I don't think so. All right. Sounds good.
That'll just about wrap this up for today. It was a pleasure having you with us.
Hope it was weird enough for you.
Catch you guys next time. Homework. Song of the Week. Starman by David Bowie.
Interesting.
Thought it would be learn it, listen to it, love it. It's pretty poignant. You should know who David Bowie is. I feel like that's culturally relevant. Anything to add, Max?
White chocolate chip macadamia cookies are pretty good.
Damn straight. Wait. 3, 2, 1.
Peace out, bitches.